We're going to start this live stream here in 1 minute. Test. Yeah. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode here of Crush Love Collins. I am your host here, Bart Hansen, and it is Monday. It is March 18th, 2024, and we do this show every single Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. And I am going to try to truck through this puppy as best as I can because I probably got the sickest I've ever gotten since COVID just after last week's call-in show, actually. And I don't know if you can still hear the congestion, but it has been a rough ride. Respiratory infection, no fever, but just really, really annoying fatigue, and really took a toll on my voice. If you're in a job where you depend on your voice and then you get congested or you lose your voice, it's obviously can be very, very problematic. So I've battled that. I remember I actually caught pneumonia back in 2011 coming back from the Windstar in Oklahoma. I think I got some food poisoning and also caught pneumonia from Toby Keith's. Oh, what a crazy, crazy trip that was. That was right around the first episode of the Crush Live Poker video. I remember I had to do 20 takes to get the intro down. But anyways, we are here March 18th, 2024. If you want to get in on the show, you can click on the link in the description because we always pre-submit all the hands. Shout out to everybody here in the live chat. And Michael G., moderator extraordinaire, is over there, as well as Ryan Nash. Try to keep the show as interactive as possible. We got 5 calls here today. So let's get into it right away here as we roll into March Madness. So first caller here is going to be Seth. Hello, Seth. You are up first, sir.
Hey, Bart. Hope you're feeling better.
Well, I'm trying to, I'm at the tail end of it. I actually will be at the Encore tomorrow, but I do not have COVID. I actually got a test for that, but yeah, it's been pretty annoying. Where are you playing out of here, Seth?
Yeah, so I have a hand from the Seminole Hard Rock Hollywood.
Okay,
1-2 game.
Southern Florida, right?
Yeah, in South Florida, yep.
Yep, okay. So a 1-2 game. All right, what's the buy-in structure?
So it's 8-handed. It's 300 cap with $5 button straddle for this hand.
Okay. $5 button straddle, and then what does it go in order through the blinds, or?
Yeah, so action starts on the small blind, and I'm 500 effective with the main villain on this hand.
All right, so 500 effective. Does like the button get like ultimate last action or something like that?
No, not in this game. If there's any action, button just acts in turn when it gets around to him.
All right, so kind of a traditional setup. So through the blinds first, okay.
Yep. So hero in small blind opens King of Diamonds, Jack of Diamonds to 15.
So you're first to act, right?
Yep, first to act.
How often is this game straddled? Oh, yeah, like is it every hand?
It's not every hand. It's about half the time. And standard open with the straddle has been $15.
Okay, just 3x, huh?
Yep.
I mean, it's interesting to note too. I always say this, that you're in the ultimate under the gun spot. So much like I say sometimes, like in double board, when you're up front, your range should be so unbelievably strong here that I do wonder. I haven't played Mississippi straddle games in a while, but I do wonder if you could start implementing like a limp range from up front too. I'm not usually a huge fan of limp re-raising, but this might be the one time to limp call, limp re-raise bluff. But if nobody's adjusting because it's 1-2, then it probably doesn't matter. But when you look at it, if you open from the small blind, that should be unbelievably tight, which is why I always advocate in bomb pots from checking from up front blind after the flop, because the bet, you coming in betting into say like 8 unknown hands, is just so strong. People can play really correctly. It's kind of the same concept pre-flop, but I mean if it's 1-2, nobody's paying attention. So all right, so you go to 15.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and I actually do some of the limping up front if it's a stronger player on the button. But in this lineup, there wasn't much three betting, so I just went with the standard RFI from early position.
Okay, so you go to 15. Yep.
Yep. So middle position calls, and then the button also calls.
And by the way, one of our content creators, the guy that made the solve for live pre-flop ranges, which was like done with like live node locking of what he thought were tendencies, Nate Schmidt, there are ranges, I believe, on a button straddle in the solve for live over at Crush Live Poker. King Jack suit is probably close. I mean, again, the lower you play, probably the more I would open a lot of high card hands. Like where I would shift in terms of it's a really capped game is the high card hands go up in value. Like even King Queen off is way better than like 5-6 suited. And honestly, I'd rather have King Queen off than like Ace 4 suited in these types of games, just because it goes to showdown so much, you know. So MP calls, button calls. Okay, so three ways 45.
Yeah, and button, he's going to be the main villain in this hand. And I've seen him flat some hands that should have been 3-bet pre-flop earlier in the session. He flatted Ace King and Pocket Jacks, and got to showdown with those. But also showed up flatting hands like 6 deuce suited. So his flatting range is extremely wide.
This is the button.
Yeah, the button. Yep.
Okay.
So the flop comes out King of Hearts, Queen of Hearts, 4 of Clubs.
Okay.
And I think I have a pretty straightforward continue here, so I lead out for 15.
Well, I don't know about that type of sizing though here. I mean, here's my take. I mean, the lower you go, when I just look at this board and look at the properties of your hand, right? It's a textured 2 Broadway board with a flush draw. So usually in single raise pots, even multi-way, we want to bet larger than that. The other things that like quickly come to my head as well, there's less of a chance that somebody's got king queen, right? Because there's a queen out there, and you would think that ace king is 3-bet off. Now maybe not always at 1-2, but there are things that lean towards you having the best hand here, the blocking properties, the propensity for people to 3-bet ace king. I want to get as much value as possible. I probably would have went 40, to be honest with you, against 2 guys.
Okay. Yeah, I generally tend to go smaller multi-way, but it's good to note.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean that's the theory, smaller multi-way, but that's because your opponents are supposed to have to defend less, but that's not really the reality of live low stakes poker. So the adjustment is just a bet larger with value hands.
Sure.
Because they're not supposed to. The reason why you're supposed to go smaller is because you're trying to force a queen to have to defend when you go full pot. You know, a queen in the middle just, pitches the hand, but that just doesn't really happen that much at 1-2. That's the adjustment. But okay, so you bet 15.
Yep. Middle position folds and button calls.
All right, so button calls closing the action, right?
Yep.
All right, so now we're at 75.
Yeah, so 75 to the turn, which is the Jack of Spades.
So Jack of Spades here on the turn. King of Hearts, Queen of Hearts, 4 of Clubs turns a Jack of Spades. So you turn sort of top and middle here, but like there's a straight that comes in here in the form of Ace 10. But okay, I would still bet here.
Yeah, and this is where I kind of debated between a 2/3 sizing or going for like a geometric sizing to try to get the money in by the river, but I ended up going with betting 50 because I thought if I went geometric, I couldn't get called by worse twice with overbets. So I bet 50 here.
Now, when you see geometric, you're talking about betting more to leave less of percentage of the pot right on the river to get it in.
Yeah, like going like 133% turn and then jamming 133% river.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, but that would be a thing like if the turn was like the deuce of diamonds or something like that. You know what I'm saying? Like this isn't a card I think that you get to overbet all that much here when a straight comes in. I think betting 2/3 is fine. You could still, I mean, he's closing the action. Hands with a 10x in it are open ended. So if he's got like Queen 10, Jack 10, those hands are open ended, King 10, things like that. I would say it is probably hard to make a huge bet at the end and get, I mean, maybe you get called by King 10, King 9. It really depends. I mean, there are just some games that no one's ever releasing, top pair, and then you just kind of go back and forth. It's like, he really shouldn't have ace king. He should squeeze, but maybe not. So you bet 50. Okay.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And villain min clicks it to 100.
So hero bets 50, and button raises to 100. And I remember why I picked this hand out, because I know, Seth, you are a CLP subscriber. And this is just straight out of what I like to call Fifth Street Chicken. And it's the perfect example of Fifth Street Chicken where you have the betting lead. You have a strong but non-nut hand, which is what you have here, right? The nuts change. You lose to a set of fours, 9, 10, ace 10, things like that. You have a strong but non-nut hand, and you're getting a price. So this is where people get a little bit confused, like in terms of turn pot odds. So the pot is 225, and it's 50 for you to call. So you're getting 4.5 to 1. Now, not only could you have the best hand, and this goes check, check at the end, but you also have equity to improve as well. Now, when you look at this, though, with King Jack, I don't even know if there's really any difference here between having King Jack and King King the way that you'd play it. The only difference being in sort of a small stakes game is you might say, well, I'll just pile the turn here with King King because the guy's never folding like Queen Jack or a set of fours or something like that. But when you do a lot of unblocking of the top pair and then a straight shows up, like honestly at 1-2, I would probably still just call with King King. I mean, maybe it depends on, or Queen. Now, Queen's a little bit different. I'd actually rather have Queen to pile here because it gives my opponent more of an opportunity to have kings up. But I mean, obviously with your hand here, usually you don't see a kind of, I mean, I don't know how often people like throw in stop raises at 1-2. And what I mean by stop raises, he's like raising the turn with King 10 or King 9 and then just sort of taking a showdown. But the whole concept of Fifth Street Chicken is you sort of make it look like you're going to call. And then you're basically saying you're playing a game of chicken with the guy at the end where you're saying, okay, I have something. Are you going to really bluff here at the end? Because it looks like I'm going to call on a brick. And then sometimes you don't call. But a lot of times it might go check, check, and you win with King Jack here at the end too. The other thing that's a little bit weird, though, is because the raise is so small. Somebody could make the argument that it's not even a game of chicken because you might be calling with everything here. Like if you bet 50 and he went like 200 and you were deeper and you called, that's like chicken. Like, okay, you at least have a king here or maybe some sort of heart draw, not heart draw. You're basically daring the guy to bluff at the end if he would. But I mean, I think call is the only play here.
Yeah, and that's what I did. I called.
So hero calls. And now we are at what, 275?
Yep, 275.
275, and you guys have what, 370?
370.
Okay.
Yep, 370 back.
Yep. Okay.
So the river is the 7 of clubs.
All right, that's a blank.
Yep.
Again, the board is King of Hearts, Queen of Hearts, 4 of clubs, Jack of Spades, 7 of clubs here with King Jack from the ultra under the gun small blind because there's a button straddle. And he gets min clicked on the turn. And now we get this run out. It gets min clicked when he turns King Jack. And now the river's a 7 of clubs. King, Queen, 4, Jack, 7. No flushes or anything. I assume you check.
I did check.
Uh-huh.
I thought about leading small here, like 60 or 75. But I ultimately leaned against it.
That's interesting. That's interesting. What you say that, like almost like a block bet. And
right.
We're actually going
to get called by like Queen Jack.
Yeah.
King,
we're actually
spades.
Yeah, we're actually going to have a call dealing with a block bet here, the fourth call. too. I'm not in general. I'm not a huge fan of a block bet. Of course, a block bet, you have to be able to get called by worse in order to block bet. You could make a case here, actually, the more I think about it, where that might be prudent if you are going to bet and fold, because you want to get value from all those hands that are going to check back that might have stopped raise turn. You know what I'm saying? Like if
Yeah, exactly.
like, it sucks if like queen jack just checks back here, right? It sucks if
Right.
he has like jack 4 suited. I mean, it's 1-2, jack 4 of diamonds, and it checks back. But if you come out and block here, he's going to call with those hands, but he's not going to raise you all in.
Right. That was my thinking. But I ultimately landed on a check.
Yep.
And button shoved 370.
I mean, here's the thing. I mean, anytime I would be playing a game like this, like 1-2, I mean, I've been hopping in 1-3. I can tell you just from what I would tell you when I go to like Chasers and wait for the PLO game, because I'm playing half of that, and then I'll play Hold'em at Encore. Sometimes there won't be a seat, and I'll be playing 1-3 500 cap, right? And I don't know any of the players. And it seems to me that a lot of those guys don't know me too, which is somewhat surprising. It's just down at that level. I don't know. They don't say anything. I will say that if I was playing against a guy at 1-3 that took this line, I would fold. And I would fold probably pretty easily here too. Because again, you would have to. Now, I know that there's clicking buttons and stuff like that, but this is a huge bet, right? It's a huge bet at 1-2. I'm going to overfold at the end. And again, you sort of have to come up with one of two scenarios where he's turning something into a bluff, like a pair, that he doesn't think
Like
has
pocket
showdown value.
tens.
Or yeah,
But I don't think
that's
he's
but
finding that
that's
bluff.
but that's so rare. And then also he is waiting until the turn to make a semi bluff, which could even be like more rare. Like say for example, he had, I mean, I guess the jack changes things. I was saying like say he had like 10-8 of hearts. I guess that's just a flush draw that now turns, 15 out draw. That's not like a delayed semi bluff. That's more of he picked up a bunch. But I mean, 9-10 beats you. So I don't see how I could really make. I don't know how. Like I'll tell you what a delayed semi bluff would be here. If you had like 7-4 of hearts or ace 4 of hearts, right? He waited to the turn instead of like raising the flop. That would be rare too. So I would probably fold this pretty quickly, to be honest with you. The more I think about it.
Yeah, and so I ultimately did fold.
Okay.
And I got a reveal, not immediately, but when he was racking up his chips, I asked what he jammed with, and he said he had pocket queens that didn't 3-bet pre-flop.
I don't know. I mean, I guess it's possible. But again, like, so doesn't 3-bet pre-flop. I mean, you do see some wacky stuff at 1-2. Was this guy an older guy or something?
He was like a middle-aged white guy.
I don't know why he would lie about like holding queen, which is, still beats you, right? But isn't a
Right.
straight. It's a weird how sometimes people lie. Like if the guy said, yeah, I had pocket tens, you know that he would be lying, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, I suppose it's possible, but it's interesting that if he was just on the button because of the setup, when you take a look at this, like if there wasn't a call in between and you opened from the ultra under the gun, I could actually see flattening on the button with queen, maybe not at 1-2, but it just kind of goes to show you how extreme the configuration is because you're in the true one hole, right? Where
Right.
you're opening into 8, well, I guess 7 unknown hands if you said it was 8-handed. But yeah, no, I think the river is a trivial fold, whether he has queen or not. I don't think twice really about it. But what would you have done with king on the turn?
I think I would still just call there because he has all 16 combos of ace 10. And that's
Right.
what I thought the most likely holding was, just in terms of combos and the way he played the hand.
Right.
And that 10-9 suited as well.
Right. And then you look at that and then you get into a situation at the end. Let's just say that you had king. And you get into a situation at the end where the guy goes all in for pot and you're like, well, I don't think he's ever bluffing. So, and let's just say that we never really thought that he had queen. Then you'd look at it and you'd be like, well, there's 3 combos of 4-4, right? King, queen, 4, jack, 7. and there's 16 combos of ace 10.
Right.
And you could be like, well, his value range, he's got 4 times more value than overplay, right? A 4-to-1 ratio. And then you take a look at the pot odds, which you wouldn't be getting. And that's how I would look at it. It would be a 6 spot with king, king. Sometimes you can't make huge laydowns at the end, but in these games. But I appreciate the call. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks, Bart.
All right. I'm going to be going to the water a lot here today. All right, let's move on here. Next caller, second caller here. This is going to be Darren. Hello, Darren. You are up next, sir.
Hi, Bart.
How's it going, Darren?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good. Where's this one played out of?
This is played out of Mad River Poker Club in Dayton, Ohio.
Oh, one of those membership clubs, huh? In Ohio?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. I actually played on Poker on Air way back in the day, which was a live stream. That was in Akron, Ohio. They still have that up on their YouTube channel, actually, if you just Google it. But Joey Ingram played some PLO on there. It was way back in the day, like before Stones, actually. So, all right, what's the size of the game?
This is a 5-5 no limit with a $5 big blind ante.
With a $5, just the big blind puts in $5?
Yep.
So, like nine-handed?
9-handed, yeah.
So it's like you're playing, what, 50 to 75 cents an ante per hand, right?
Right.
Just juicing a little bit of money in the pot, right?
Yeah, we started this game as a 5-10 no limit a few months back and found that it played a little too tight at those stakes. So we changed it to a 5-5 with a 5 ante, which made the openings a little bit smaller, the 3-bets a little smaller, and it plays a lot better now.
That's good. That's good. And how deep are you guys?
This hand we're 2,600 effective. It is a match the stack game, max of 2K to start. Most players buy in for 1,000 to 1,500 typically.
Nice old match the stack game. 5-5 match the stack game. Great. Okay.
Yeah, it gets big later in the day.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, starters. By the way, how do they deal with the money in places like this? Do they have a cage?
Yeah, there's a cage.
Okay.
Yeah, so all the money's in a cage, and everything's legit. It's a time-based game, $10 an hour, so it's not too bad.
Okay.
So pre-flop, I'm in middle position with ace-5 of diamonds. It's folded to me. I raised to $20, which is pretty standard open.
Just straight. Oh yeah, 5-5 with the $5 big blind ante. Okay, yep, to 20. Okay.
Cutoff calls, button calls, and big blind calls.
So 1, 2, 3, 4. Looks like it's $80. You have ace-5 of diamonds in mid position. Okay.
It's 90 with the small and the ante. But
okay. 90. Yep. No drop. Right. Time.
Right.
That's awesome.
Time.
Great setup. Okay.
The flop is ace of spades, ace of clubs, 7 of diamonds.
Ace of spades, ace of clubs, 7 of diamonds, and you have ace-5, and you're up front, except for the fact, well, there's a big blind that calls too, so you're sort of in the middle. The cutoff and the button are also in there, so it is an interesting one. I actually remember this hand because it's not really a draw-heavy board, and you do wonder sometimes when you have a weak ace if you could, if you bet into 3 people here, I don't know what really continues all that much here besides, even if you bet and then the cutoff and the button fold, I guess the big blind calls with 7x, but I could see checking here some of the time just because of the texture. I guess you could also just put in a tiny bet too.
Yeah. So the big blind checks, like you said, it looked like a good spot to check for me. I'm either way ahead here and everybody's folding, or I'm way behind and I'm getting raised and not liking my spot out of position. So I did decide to check, and it checks through the flop.
Okay. So big blind checks, you check, and it goes check, check. So probably the cutoff and the button don't have aces, I would say. I mean, obviously there's 4 aces in the deck. The unknown hand is obviously the big blind because he's naturally checking too.
Right.
The only thing the only thing, and when you look, it's not really, you don't necessarily think it's like a slow play, but there's also, you look at times when you sometimes check strong hands, can some people catch up to other things? And, occasionally a good thing might happen where you see a king or a queen and then you somehow get 2 streets against that, right? On the
Right.
turn.
So turn card, pretty spicy card. It's the 5 of spades.
Wow.
So yeah, gives me a full house.
Yep.
Puts a backdoor spades out there.
Right. Ace of spades, ace of clubs, 7 of diamonds, 5 of spades here with ace 5 of diamonds. Okay.
Big blind checks again.
Uh-huh.
I bet 45.
All right. So hero bets 45. I might go a little bit smaller here just to try to stay consistent with when big blind checks again. It just seems like nobody has an ace here all that much. I mean, I guess it's fine. I mean, like I said, sometimes with the half pot bet, I look at a half pot bet live as almost like a 1/3. It's calling with the same range. So if you're trying to get the calls from the 1/3, you can just bet a little bit larger. So you go 45. Okay.
Cutoff calls.
Next to act.
And
okay.
Yep. And everybody else folds.
Fold. Next to act calls. So what the hell does the cutoff have here? And the pot is 140, and you guys are super deep, right?
Pot's 180 now.
180, excuse me. You guys are super deep, right?
We're very deep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're still looking at 2,400, 2,500 effective. So.
Right.
So river is the deuce of spades.
So the backdoor spades come in.
Correct.
Ace of spades, ace of clubs, 7 of diamonds, 5 of spades, deuce of spades. By the way, putting out one other hand that you actually lose to now, which is 3-4 spades. If that guy's V-pipping that.
3-4 spades, but I'm not seeing that too much out of the cutoff.
Okay. You don't think he's going to V-pip that?
Yeah, I don't. That's in his calling range pre-flop. So
yeah.
So that's not too big of a concern here. But suited spades hands are definitely in his range.
Now, before you tell me, I'm trying to think here. Before you tell me what you do, I actually don't remember what you do here at the end. I wonder if I would ever go for a check raise here on the river. And the reason why I say that is because the spades come in, and I just don't know if you're gonna get enough. I mean, obviously it sucks. It's like, you bet the river, and then, or if you check the river and the guy checks behind, you're like, I missed out. But what are you going to get called by, though, if you bet in terms of a bluff catching hand? The reason why you might go for a check raise is because you might be able to get more money in against a flush that might just call. Now, you could do something or an ace somehow that was playing it super slow. You could do kind of a reversey block bet here too. So you could sometimes check raise the river or throw in a really tiny bet to induce a raise so that you could bet 3-bet. But something probably has to go on here, I think, to get more money in the pot than just a standard like $90 to $100 bet. I don't think just a bet of like, half to 2/3 really is the best play the way that this one's gone down because you get called. But you just get called by a lot of hands that might bet and also call. Or if you throw in the reverse block, bet and raise you,
Yep. Yeah, so a lot of that went through my mind. Also, a lot of times when I just stab at the turn, I give up river with a check. So I did decide to check, looking to check raise.
Okay.
So I check. Cutoff throws out a black chip, $100 chip.
All right, so cutoff bet's 100.
Yep.
So, I mean, on this run out, he's saying he's got a flush or an ace, right? Or, I mean, if he's got a bluff, it doesn't matter, right? If he has 6-8 and he's missed, it doesn't matter. But for value, right? He's going to have an ace or an ace, a flush, or better, right?
Right,
like
exactly.
If 7's full, 5, one combo of 5's full, whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
So I raised to 475.
All right. So cutoff bet's 100, and hero raises to 475. I like it. I might have gone a little bit smaller. I might have gone to 400. I would hate to see a guy bet fold an ace, but I mean, you know your lineup and you know this guy better than I do.
Yeah.
But you thought
and
that he
here's
would
the
bet call with an ace?
I thought he would bet call with an ace, and I was pretty sure he would bet call with a flush too. So, especially a king high flush. So the interesting thing happened is he snap raises to 1200.
So he 3-bets the river.
Correct.
So cutoff raises, oh, this is going to get interesting here, to 1200. Because this becomes a math problem in two different scenarios. So the pot was 180, go into the river, you bet 100. It has ace, ace, 7, 5 deuce. You have ace 5, right? There's one straight flush out there. Backdoor spades come out. You check raise the river. And he 3-bets the river, which is just never, ever going to be just a... It's never a flush. It's never a flush, really. It's either a bluff, which is almost non-existent, right? Or a boat or better. Now...
Exactly.
So when you bet 100 and he goes to 470, or you go to 475, that's what? 775. And then he raises another, what? 875. Again, my mind's a little bit hazy. I think it's 1650. It would be 1650, 725 for you to call. You would be getting, if on a call, you'd be getting about 2-1. The question here, though, is that do you want to jam back over the top all in, right?
Right. There's what, another 1400 to play for.
Right. There's another 1400 to play for. So the it goes from you being good here 1 out of 3 times to you being good here, more than 50% of the time. And I'm going to make some very, very extreme assumptions, which I think we can make in live poker. The assumptions I'm going to make, the easiest one, number one, is the cutoff is not bluffing. Because we always say, well, if he's bluffing or he has us beat, then it's just a call. True, that's logic. Right. I think he's bluffing like 1 out of 500 times here. The second thing is that he's never raised folding. If he has a value hand, he's not ever folding. So you could almost treat it, well, not necessarily, yeah, I mean, could you treat it like an all-in? You could almost treat, if you were going to shove, you almost treat it like an all-in. I mean, now it's just combo work, right? What do we lose? What do we lose?
I don't know if this villain is never folding a worse full house.
He's going to 3-bet to 1200 and then fold for 1400 more. I don't know, man. I mean, when you look at the hands that he has that are worse than yours, the thing that screams out is 7's full. Okay.
Right.
If you were to say that he's capable of 3-bet folding 7's full, then certainly the equation changes, but I just don't buy that. Like I said, I'm going with that hard assumption. So now you look at this and you're like, all right, what do I beat? Well, you beat 7's full. There's 3 combos. And maybe they play it like that because, it's a low board. He'd have to slow play the whole thing. You beat 5's full, which is just 1 combo of 5's full, if it's ever played that way. And then you also beat ace deuce, which is it possible that he can have a suited ace deuce? You've got ace 5 of diamonds. Yes, there's ace deuce of hearts. Right.
Exists.
And that might be another hand that, 3-bets river way more even often than 7-7. So, I mean, you're looking at...
And ace 7 of hearts exists too.
Well, that's you lose to that. I'm looking at the hands that you beat.
Oh, the hands that beat.
Yeah, I mean, the hands that you beat are 7's full, ace deuce, and 5-5. And then, of course, you tie to ace 5. So it's 3, 4. If he's only playing the suited combo, it's 4. Let's say he only does it with one of the combos of 7-7. So you're beating 1 7-7 combo, 1 ace deuce combo, and then 2 to 2.5 combos you're beating, but then you've got the 5-5 in there, so maybe 3 combos that you're beating, and then you're losing to 1 combo ace 7 suited of hearts, right? and you're losing to 3-4 spades, but you said that he doesn't play 3 or 4 spades. I think that would be the critical inflection point for me. If you don't think this guy V-pips 3-4 spades, then I think I shove here pretty easily. You're only losing to one hand, and I can come up with more than one hand that you're beating if he's not playing 3-4 spades.
So I ended up just calling, thinking that he would fold worse boats, but only really call with the A7. I mean, the check raise 4-bet jam just looks so strong.
It is. Well, it's insanely strong, but people can't raise fold. Like it's just insane. People just don't raise. So some other people are saying that A7 raises turn a lot. I don't. Maybe. I mean, it should. It should put some money in at some point, right?
Right.
A7, but I just I don't know. I just can't see somebody 3-betting a check raise on the river and then folding. I never have ever seen that at that level.
So I call, he rolls over ace deuce, which I win a nice pot. Obviously, it's a $2,500 pot with that went to the river with 200 in the middle. So
yeah,
I'm not too upset about it, but I've polled a lot of players on what they would do on this river decision, and it was about 50-50 on call or jam. So it was I thought it was an interesting spot, and weird line where it blows up on the river.
Now, I will say, though, that from your opponent's perspective, if I was playing somebody that I had somewhat respect for, and I played this hand like your opponent did with ace deuce, I don't think I 3-bet the check raise. I don't think I thought it was
an odd check raise myself, or odd 3-bet myself. So.
But of course, that's making the assumption that your opponent, which would be you, is capable of, say, check raise folding for value with like the king high flush, because I think this might be a pretty good spot sometimes to actually check raise the king high flush on the river, possibly but then it's an easy fold to a 3-bet. It's not even a quandary. I mean, I've done some pretty big check raise folds for value on the river when I know when the 3rd bet comes, it just becomes ultra strong, but I know that they'll also call. They'll bet call, and it's a way to get more money in the pot. But it's interesting. But I do think I would have jammed. Thank you very much for the call. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Trucking on through. All right. Do I have somebody on hold here? Oh, someone's joined me. All right, so let's move here to the next caller, and this is going to be Andrew. Hello, Andrew. You are up next, sir.
Hey, how's it going, Bart?
Pretty good, man.
Good. I heard you're sick, right?
I've never been this congested, to be honest with you. I can't remember. I mean, I'm way better today than I was over the weekend, but it's been. You know how when people had COVID, like way back.
Yeah.
When it first came out, when they were like they couldn't taste food. I haven't been able to taste food for 5 days.
Oh, that stinks.
Which is kind of wacky.
Yeah, I woke up a little cold this afternoon too. Nothing too bad though.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you want me to just get right to it?
Yeah, get right. So where are you playing out of?
This is a New York City game.
Okay.
Like a members kind of club.
Yep.
It is a 1-3.
1-3.
500 cap. And it's a time game.
500 max buy-in?
For the 1-3, it's 500 max buy-in, yeah.
And it's a time game, really? Wow.
It is. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
It's a deal. That's probably a deal.
It is. It's 14 an hour, but in the game goes, from like, it'll run for 15 hours straight, and there's tons of chips on the table.
Would you say 14 an hour?
14 an hour.
That's not even that bad. To be honest with you, I mean, they charge $12 a half at Encore in Boston for 510. Now I know it's 1-3, it's 500 cap, but I remember they used to charge time, like in Vegas years ago, like across all games. Like you could play like the Bellagio's like little game was a time. I don't know how much it was, but nowadays it's probably not that bad. And it's way cheaper than definitely a drop, and cheaper than a rake too.
Yeah, for sure. So I definitely been playing like high rate games near where I live, which is outside of the city, and I now drive into the city for just a better game. So
yeah.
So in this hand, we are. I have the villain covered, but we're 1800 effective,
Okay.
and so it's 1-3. Sometimes there's a straddle. Right now, there's no straddle.
No straddle. Okay.
No straddle on, and the
Yeah.
straddle 6, and they cap it at 6. And there's no restraddles. It's ran pretty diligent.
Okay.
So there's 2 lippers up front. I'm on the button. The low jack raises to $20. The hijack calls. I look down on the button. I have King of Hearts, King of Spades. So I raise to 75.
So 2 limps, low jack to 20, hijack calls, hero on button, 3 bets to 75. It's a little bit on the smaller side. I mean, I guess there's a couple limpers up there on front. If you went 3, yeah, I mean, if you went even just 3x plus the dead call, with that dead call in there, I would probably, I mean, just a little bit subtle. And you guys are deep. I don't know how deep the other stacks were, but I would tend to go a little bit larger. Just,
Okay.
you know,
Yeah, the other
maybe
stacks
100.
were pretty everybody's pretty deep at this point. I mean, the smallest stack at this time is probably $1,000. So, but so the small blind, big blind folds, the 2 limpers fold, and the low jack calls and the hijack calls.
So the low jack and the hijack call.
Yes.
So you're dealing with you got a double flat there and the initial opener calls. So it's probably what, like 235, 240, something like that.
Yeah, it's like I think it's like 245 with the dead money, 240, something like that.
Okay, I'll put it up
No,
as
no
240.
drop.
Okay.
And the flop comes out Jack of Clubs, 4 of Diamonds, 5 of Hearts.
Jack of clubs, 4 of diamonds, 5 of hearts. Not a bad flop for king.
Yeah, no, I'm loving it there.
Uh-huh.
Pretty good. So the low jack checks,
Mhm.
the hijack checks, and I bet 90.
Okay. That's 90. So 1/3 would be 80, right? And
Yeah.
again, I still think there's just like a little bit of live nuance where you can actually take a 1/3 sizing and make it a little bit larger just because you're getting there's just a wider range out there that calls you. So I don't mind the bet. So you go 90, okay. Yep.
The low jack calls and the hijack folds.
All right, so next act calls. Low jack calls, hijack folds. And then as I just cannot stress enough, especially if somebody who's sort of new to no limit cash games, because, in tournaments, hand reading isn't really all that important. I mean, sometimes it is, but it's more about like push, shove charts. The positional awareness of where that, what is going on is so paramount, because the low jack is going to have a tighter range, or he's supposed to have a tighter range calling with a guy behind him. And if the hijack was closing the action, like if the hijack flatted with 5-6 suited, the hijack, and then you bet and the low jack folded, the hijack's supposed to call with 5-6 suited, right? But when you bet 90, the low jack calls, the hijack's supposed to fold. And the same thing can be said about the low jack. He's not supposed to call with middling hands here with the guy behind him. He really should have a jack. He should not defend here with 8s or 9s too. I think that's a mistake that a lot of people make too when they look at, because also too, like if you have a pair like of 8s or 9s, even though it's like technically like a better hand than say 5-6, if you're behind, you have less equity to improve as opposed to if you had 5-6.
I think also like maybe with this guy, some live reading, he was trying to, feel me out and see where I was. I'm new here. He seems like a reg at the place. And I came in, it's like my first or second session. I'm pretty much crushing. So I think he just wanted to kind of see me up to see what would happen. It's kind of what I got from that.
So the pot's 420.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the turn card is the 2 of Diamonds.
The 2 of diamonds.
Right.
So Jack 5-4 deuce with backdoor diamonds. Okay.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So the villain checks.
Yeah.
And I go pretty polar. I felt like I went 325.
So hero bets 325. It's about like a 3/4 pot size bet. I mean, the only thing that changes here with the deuce is just like, if he has ace 3.
Right, ace 3 or yeah, nothing really. I felt pretty confident on the deuce. I did see diamonds come in and like a one-liner to an ace if the river comes off like a 3 or something.
By the way, multi-way too. I don't even know. See, even ace 3 with a backdoor. This is how the multi-way nature what's supposed to happen, the multi-way nature of a hand, even if he had ace three with a backdoor, because the hijack's behind him, he's probably not supposed to call. And obviously heads up, it's a slam dunk call or raise, right?
Right.
But so yeah, I mean, you would think that you would try to target, a jack here. So I don't mind the bet here. 325, okay.
So the villain, he puts in the call really fast. Like just
Fast call.
Fast.
So low jack snap calls. Low jack snap calls. And 650 is 1070, right? 1070. Yeah. And you guys have 450, like, well, I mean, effectively it's like 1350-ish left.
Right.
Math left. Okay. Yep.
And so the river comes to 10 of clubs.
10 of clubs. So it's jack 5-4 deuce, 10 of clubs. I mean, it's a pretty innocuous card. I mean, once in a while you get kind of screwed by like someone having jack 10 suited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I felt pretty good about the 10 of clubs. I didn't like the jack 10 suited. I was thinking jack 10 suited. I was thinking like, would he be, 10-10? But at the moment, I wasn't thinking of that. That kind of came later.
By the way, Nate saying that you could definitely go larger on the turn too. I mean, I know you went 3/4, but yeah. Especially if ace 3 is not represented, for sure. You could go larger. Pot's 1070, 10 of clubs. Okay, now what?
The villain, he just rips it, jams in all in for 13 plus.
Whoa. Rip for 1300 plus?
Yeah, he just snaps, says all in. They throw the all in button in front of them, and the chips are in play. So
now, for some people, again, who aren't that experienced, let's say you're like a new to the game, but you're studying. You're like a student of the game. You might look at this hand on paper and be like, well, how could you just not call? Like nothing came in. It doesn't make any sense, right?
Right.
And logically, that's true. But I will say, though, that just from experience of playing live poker, the call, especially in a 3-bet pot, talking about an extreme configuration where you bet into 2 people on the flop in a 3-bet pot, you bet very large on the turn, like you bet almost pot on the turn. It is so rare to see somebody just open rip on a blank that this spot I almost see more as value, as perplexing as it is. I'm not saying that I'm going to fold necessarily, but I'm just saying to some people that maybe haven't played a whole lot of live poker, when you see this line, it is perplexing, but it is rarely a bluff, I would say, which is the call big bet, and just open rip a blank at the end.
Yeah.
Now, with that being said,
there
is, of course, there is a value hand that he could have made here, which is Jack 10. It's interesting with Jack 10 because, again, who knows what these guys are. Now, obviously, if he checks the river to you, you're going to bet, right?
Yeah, if he would have checked to me, I was thinking about definitely going for like thick, like target ace jack, going for thick value. I was probably at, maybe, but not too much to scare him off because, sometimes like you put out a big stack of 500 green, it might look too strong. So I probably would have did like a 425, 450 bet, something like that.
Now, some people are saying, and again, I'll just for the hand reading purposes, and I acknowledge that it's possible. This is why I keep going back to the whole multi-way nature. Some people are saying that this guy could have 10-10 here. And yes, he could have 10-10. At some point, though, that is supposed to be folded off a lot. And again, whether it's on the flop with a guy behind him, the turn is interesting because obviously the turn is a brick for 10-10, but it might increase some of your barreling because it brings a wheel draw in too. Some of your ace highs like turn wheel draws. So, if he's got 10-10 with like certain suits, like maybe 10-10, maybe no diamond or something like that's supposed to be peeled some of the time to 3/4. Maybe this is just me right off the top, thinking off the top of my head. I don't know in real time. I don't know how often he gets here with 10-10. It's very dicey to get to the end, obviously with 10-10. The other thing too is that as bizarre as this upfront jam is, it would still be pretty bizarre for someone to upfront jam, Jack 10 too.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I go into the tank like for a little bit, like the think tank, like almost like the stuck tank. I'm like, damn, I've played a decent amount of live poker and, recreationally, but now for profit. So like I'm like thinking, I'm like, man, why would he open rip here? And then,
But just before, don't tell us, go through your thought
Right.
process, but don't
Yeah.
tell us the result because I've got some
No.
more to say about this. Yeah.
So, I'm sitting there, I'm going through the streets, and it goes back to like the flop when he just, flats the 90 with somebody in between us, and he's a pretty capable, probably a studied player, and I watched him play for like the last few hours. I'm going back to a few hours of play, and I've watched hands where he did bet big, folded to jams, or when he had it, he went for like, like half pot, maybe 1/3 pot value. Never seen him rip. And like you said, though, most of the, I've done that. I've massively overbet ripped rivers with the nuts and gotten called off light. And so I'm like, I'm really in the tank here. I'm counting out, I have him covered, but he hasn't moved. He's like a rock. He's like stone faced. He's a rock. He hasn't moved. The chips didn't move. He's got just a bright all-in button in front of him. So
Let me say a couple other things too, Andrew, here about some other hands that people keep saying, like, oh, what if he has like a slow played set?
right.
And you said he was sort of, I think you said he was kind of reggy. I mean, of course, he can have these hands, but he really shouldn't as much as people think, because once the turn brings like the deuce of diamonds and it's Jack 4-5 deuce of diamonds with as deep as you guys are, I feel like he's got to get some money in the pot. And then if you were going to play a hand, say he had like Jack or something like that, and you're going to play a hand like this, I do wonder if he was possibly going for a check raise on the river, although a lot of opponents will check back. I just feel like at some point he's going to put some money in before that. So I'm really torn here because I know how whack job this line is, but at the same time, it's 24-20 and it's 13.50 for you to call. So, I mean, you're getting less than 2-1, blah, blah, blah. MDF says you should like defend down here with probably like 40 to 45% of hands. I still sometimes, I mean, if I didn't know anyone here, like whatsoever, I would probably lean more towards call. It's bizarre. It's definitely a bizarre hand. I'll say that.
Yeah. So again, I was thinking back through all the streets, right? Pre-flop. And like you said, on the turn, I went about 2/3. If he had a set, obviously I have a hand. Why not start pumping the money in there?
We put 3/4 in on the turn. Yeah.
Start pumping some of that money in there. Why look for, because I could just the jam could cause me to fold later, or so I was pretty stuck for a minute, and he's like stone faced, stuck in his chair. So I said, let me shake this off. I start talking. I want to get him moving around. I'm like, I got to get this guy moving around. I got to get some sort of I already went through all the streets. I kind of know what I want to do, but I'm like, let me get this guy moving around and uncomfortable a little bit. So I start talking to him a little bit, kind of like, like, oh, what are you doing? Just trying to get something out of him. And then finally I said, all right, how much is it? I kind of knew how much it was, but I wanted him to have to move his chips around, get out of his seat. So he kind of pushes chips forward. He sits back. I know live reads are one thing, and I'm not trying to go too off of that, but he just tried to be so relaxed. Like he was trying to extra hard just to lean back and look like nothing ever bothered him. So I go through all the streets with all my processing, the last 4 hours of playing with this guy, watching everything he did. And, I was like, damn, I don't know. He might have it here. So, so did you want the reveal?
Yeah.
So I ended up calling.
Okay.
I did. It was kind of like oh man, all right, this is tough. And I just slammed the chips, then like kind of like hard put the couple chips down over the line. And he does the muck position and says, nice call. So I turned over kings, and I couldn't wait fast enough for him to muck his card. So I never got to see what he had, but he mucked and he went packing. So.
Well, and just to round this call off, Andrew, and I know a lot of people disagree with me here, but even if you disagree with me in a casino, if Andrew's new player to this private game that he likes, right, with this time game, what a place for you to just turn your fucking hand over right away when the guy says good call, as opposed to like wait for him
Right.
to show his bluff.
Yeah, nah.
No,
So
I mean, I do that anyways in a casino, but you know, we've gone back and forth. Me and Internet Land have gone back and forth with this, but you know, you wanna get invited back. You know, who knows what the relationship is.
back like probably absolutely crushing this game, right? I've been back a lot, so
All right, thanks for the call, Andrew. I
Thank you.
appreciate it.
thank
right.
you. Better.
No problem.
Bye.
All right, we got 2 more calls here. We got Pablo, and then we've got Alwyn. All right, let's go to Pablo here. Pablo, you are up next, sir. What happened? Pablo is here. Pablo has left the meeting. Uh-oh. Let me go to my trusty old phone. I think Pablo... Oh, here we go. Yeah. Let's see, 9 times out of 10 that happens. Hey, Pablo. Pablo, you're there? Pablo left the meeting again. Joined the meeting, left the meeting. Well, I'm going to take a gulp of water here. Give him a second. By the way, I've been looking for a way to mute that chime. There's no way to do it. Pablo, are you there?
I'm hitting the unmute button on my headset, and it's disconnecting me completely.
Well,
Sorry about that.
No worries. We hear you now. All right, we got
Awesome.
you on. All right, where you playing out of here?
Turning Stone.
Turning Stone.
Yeah,
My
yeah.
buddy Josh, the firefighter
Mhm.
from this area, he's giggling because I have a family, right? And he's like, "Are you coming with me to Turning Stone for the tournament?" I'm like, "Yeah, dude. Like, yeah. Are we gonna share a room? How about we share a bed?"
So is he out here now?
I think he's going. Like, what is it? Is there some big tournament coming up?
There's 2 weeks of there's a whole WSOP series circuit events.
Right. Is that the
So,
first? Is that the first time they've done a circuit there? Or?
I think this is the 3rd year in a row that they've done one.
Well, I went to Syracuse for college. I always tell this story. Like, I remember going to Turning Stone before they had poker. I went to Turning Stone on my 18th birthday when I was a freshman in college. I took the bus from the Syracuse bus terminal. Talk about it.
Oof.
Yeah, it's not the best place to be in.
No, it's not.
And to go play blackjack, and I won $400, and the gambling seed was planted. I took the bus to Turning Stone. I had at least 10 times my freshman year. They started poker, I think, maybe right around the time I think Rounders happened. So, 99, 2000, something like. Of course, there was no limit. And then I went and played back over at Poker Night America. But the drive, if anybody knows, the drive from Boston to like upstate New York is just terrible. 5-hour drive of nothingness west on I-90 that I've made many times. I don't know if I'll ever go back to Syracuse. But, sorry. All right, I digress. So, all right, Turning Stone, are you playing 2-5 or what?
It's a 1-3 match to stack.
1-3 match, okay. 1-3 match. And I assume you're from upstate New York.
New York City originally, but I live here in Syracuse. So, yep.
DeWitt?
I've been here for... no, I live on Tip Hill. Do you recall Tip Hill?
No, I don't recall Tip Hill.
It's not too far from the college from Syracuse.
All right, so 1-3 match stack. How deep are you guys?
In this hand, we're 1K effective, but there's some strange stuff going on. So we've been doing some straddles, and we have 2 fun players at the table. They've been drinking. It's like 1:30 a.m. They're having a good time, and they want to double straddle, but it's not allowed. So we've been doing a round of blind $12 after the straddle.
Right, because they won't give the second guy the option, right?
Correct. Right.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's like 1-3 6-12.
Right.
But only the 6 is live.
Correct. Okay. So the 12, if people just call 12, there's no option for the $12 blind bet there.
And you said you were 1,000 effective.
Yeah, with this main villain.
So that's actually making the game somewhat shallow. Now, one of the things I notice about live play though too is that people don't. I don't know if it's if the game's always 1-3 6-12 or you're just doing a round.
No. This is very rare. Like these guys just wanted, put some more dead money in the pot. Right. We just did it to accommodate them because they're having fun. We want them to have fun. So
it's a weird thing that I see a lot of times in like outlier extreme straddle situations in live poker where people will sometimes like revert to playing somewhat passively because the stakes have gone up a lot and take hands that they would normally raise and limp with them. And then you have to make the adjustment that you have to understand that if someone's getting it all in for 1,000 in a 1-3-6-12 setup, sure, it's less than 100 big blinds, but that it's not less than 100 big blinds in their mind.
Right. It's still
Especially
$1,000.
especially if sometimes the game's just playing 1-3. So you have to make that adjustment that, yeah, maybe it's a stronger range than what would be 90 big blinds in a certain scenario.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So 1-3-6 plus 12. Okay.
Seven-handed. We're 1K effective with the one of the fun players. He bought him for 2K. Within an hour, he lost 1,000 just splashing around. So in this hand, it folds to us in the small blind, and we have 9 of hearts, 9 of spades, and we raise to 40. And in this spot, in retrospect, I should have gone a little bit bigger, I feel like, but I didn't look at his 12 as a raise. I almost looked at it as a fourth blind or something. So, but still, I think I should have gone to maybe like 55, 60.
So it gets folded to you in the small blind, right? I mean, if you're playing seven-handed, there's only really 2 folds, right, in front of you.
Yeah.
2 folds in front of you. You're next in the small blind, and you go to 40 with 4 people to the left that are in blinds, but some blinds are larger and smaller than others, like 1-3-6-12. And you go to 40. I don't really mind the sizing though that much, to be honest with you, because like those guys in the middle can't really call. I mean, you just want to get the heads up here with this guy in the straddle.
Right.
Now if you're saying like he's playing any 2 and he's going to defend with any 2, then you could go larger just for pure value. But I think it's fine.
Yeah, so we go 40 and it folds to the $12 blind. And this is the fun player who's been drinking loud, having fun. He raises us to 150.
But it's a true blind. I mean,
yeah, it's a true blind, but he didn't raise blind. He looked at his cards and then made the 3-bet, 4-bet, whatever.
But I mean, he's you got this setup like he's in for a blind raise. It's not
right.
Like you're thinking,
right.
oh, he looked at his hand and he's playing some shenanigans.
Right. No. Yeah. So yeah, he makes it 150. And what do you think in this spot? Do you think this should be like? Because I mentioned this hand to a couple people, and they're like, "You should just rip it pre." And I was like, I don't think that's necessary.
I think it really depends on how. There's different types of maniacs and different types of drunks. I mean, there are guys that are just wild as fuck, and they just want to play like super maniacal, and they're just splashing around. Maybe you find a jam and you're happy with it. But then remember, they can just call though too,
right?
With a lot of like medium strength hands. So, and then could you ever? I mean, it sounds to me like you never even considered folding.
No,
never considered folding.
No. But I don't want to jam either, because I feel like he's never calling. I don't think he's ever calling with like deuces through 8s, and at best we're in a flip situation. Well, at best we're up against pocket 8s, but more than likely it's a flip or we're dominated. So I just want to play post flop, and I feel like the way he's been playing, he's capable of making like mistakes post flop and stuff like that. So I just called the 150.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's going to get on you for that. So you call, but you can definitely get into some dicey scenarios here too. And one of the things too, I don't know if this guy had been doing this, but it looks like the pot's going to be like, I don't know, like 320. We'll just call it like 320 when you call. And, obviously you're going to have like 850 left. Sometimes with older guys, you see this a lot in tournaments. This becomes harder to play against guys that just bomb any flop, like in tournaments and things like that. Oh, God, excuse me. 1 second. Feels like my head is fucking underwater. So yeah, it's, it becomes very, very hard to play when people just bomb any, if you're going to face like a pot size bet, like on a jack high board, it's like, what am I going to do? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I don't know how this guy was necessarily playing, but it just reminded me of situations, especially like weekend warrior type tournaments, like at the WSOP, because that was pretty much the only time I play in tournaments. You have to defend less often when it's close against guys that are just going to take pot sizing. And there's still a lot of guys that do that. Now, obviously, this is a cash game, but I'm just saying. But okay, so the pot's 320, and what's the flop here?
All right, so the flop is 8 of hearts, 7 of hearts, 3 of diamonds.
8 of hearts, 7 of hearts, 3 of diamonds. Well,
Yeah, pretty good flop for nines, I would say.
I mean, yeah, and
At
then,
least,
it's really
yeah.
just going to depend on, you know, if he
Villain's
takes
actions.
large sizing, you just get it
Mhm.
in, right? I mean, you don't want to. I
Yeah.
don't think
So
you even want to screw around. Value / protection, I would think.
right. So naturally we check to the villain, and he actually takes a really small sizing. Well, he takes a 1/3. He goes 100. And
So, all right. So
Mhm.
hero checks, and I'm gonna call double DS bets 100. So if you call only, the pot will be 520, and you guys will have like 750 left. You've got 9 of hearts, 9 of spades. It's interesting. Again, it's one of these things where right off the cuff, like if I had, if I wanted to know what optimal was, and this is not an optimal type of show necessarily, I would find it curious. Maybe Nate will know, or run GTO Wizard like on the corner here. It's a tough little. No, maybe it's not a tough little conflict. I guess you could just like make it like small blind versus big blind at like 90 big blinds. At what hands start to get check raised here for value at the stack depth in a 3-bet pot? I mean, you still have, you still have depth. Like, the pot's going to be 520 and you'll have 750 left, but it can get, I mean, you could call now and then you pretty much have to decide if he bets again here on the turn, whether or not you're going to either release or go with it for the most part. But there also are times where you're allowed to check raise some hands. Maybe nines aren't quite good enough. Maybe if it was like jacks, queens, although nines does need protection. But once you start to get to that cusp, whatever the better hands that you're not 4-betting auto in this configuration start to get check raised. But nines might not be there.
So even like nines with this with the 9 of hearts, I mean, clearly it blocks like jack 9 hearts, which I don't think he's 3-betting he might, but like 9, 10 of heart. But is it better to have the heart here, you think, because of like?
Well, it's better for
heart.
Yeah, I mean, slightly better, but you're still always going to continue. Yes, if you wanted to choose a combination of nines, it would be better to have 9 hearts. But I think a more applicable, or what you should be thinking about more, is okay, what actually is check raised here as for protection / value? And I think it draws from the best hands that are not 4-bet.
Okay.
And I don't think are you 4-betting queen here?
Versus this guy, yeah.
Okay, so maybe not. Maybe jack.
Yeah, jack 10 maybe.
Did you just call?
Yeah, we just called.
All right, so hero calls, and it's 520. And like I said, you guys have about 750-ish left, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So the turn is the 3 of spades. So it's 8, 7, 3, 3.
3 of spades. Oh, here we go. Nate in the live chat says 9-9 is a half check raise and half call. So
beautiful.
There you go. So partials. Partials. Well, I mean, this is a pretty big blank, right?
Yeah, it's a great card.
Yeah.
So naturally I check again, and villain decides to check back. So that's a good sign.
Yeah, because I mean, any hand here, unless he's playing some sort of weird trap, I mean, this is one of the biggest bricks in the deck. I mean, I suppose you could have 3x of hearts, so maybe it's not as big as a brick as like a black deuce or something like that. But it goes check. And actually, too, if you've been with me for this live stream, you remember what I said at the top of the show, guys, about the fourth caller here? Because this one's what I find interesting here at the end. So it's 8-7-3 in a 3-bet pot. You've got nines. He takes 1/3. You check call. Turns a 3. 8-7-3-3. Check. Okay, what's the river?
The river is the 3 of hearts.
So it puts trips out there. Is that right?
So it's 8-7-3-3-3.
8-7-3-3-3. Oh, this one's a little bit different. Did I not catch it in the email that this was trips out there?
Not sure.
Huh. Okay. That's interesting because that definitely changes things. I thought for some reason. Hold on a second here. Ryan, my boy, will do some editing magic here for the bust of, but I have to go back and I gotta go back here and look at something. No, you have it as 3 of hearts. Okay, I was thinking a little bit differently. I was thinking about something a little bit different, but
So what were you thinking before?
well, I was thinking that. So I know. So not to ruin it, but you're planning out coming in actually planning on coming in block and basically making kind of a small bet for value here, right?
Yeah.
Right, because of the fact that the guy checked behind, right,
Yeah.
on the turn, and you're like, oh, maybe I can get called by ace high. Is assuming what I'd be thinking if I were you, right?
Yes.
The problem is that it's a heart that came in at the end, even though it's weird because it's a tripped up board. So if he was thinking about trying to make some sort of hero call with hearts here, if he's trying to make some sort of hero call with ace high, he still loses to hearts.
Right.
And for some reason, I thought the river was like, say, like the deuce of hearts. And you kind of came out and made a block bet, and then he raised you. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. Because say the river's the deuce of hearts and you make a block bet and he raises you, that would like really put my spidey senses up of like, this could just be like, a bare ace of hearts type of play here.
Right.
With the way that this is played. However, because it's trips, why would someone raise the river with the ace of hearts? You know what I'm saying? Like it becomes irrelevant. But I would still bet here if I were you. Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. So river's a 3 of hearts.
Yeah.
And so we lead out small. So in my notes, I had it at 500 just because I excluded, the $7 rate that they take. Blah blah blah. So I block bet for a 15% pot. I bet 75. Like I said, targeting ace highs, sometimes king highs, because this guy's just, he's playing a little loose. Might look me up a little bit light.
So you're trying to get called by some ace highs here, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Hero bets 70. Do you see what I'm talking about, though? That, like, it just would be better if, like, the 3 was, like, a club here.
Mm-hmm.
Because then if the 3's a club, he can hero you with off trying to, like, beat busted hearts, right?
Yeah.
Here, he doesn't beat busted hearts with a non-paired hand, unfortunately.
Right. I mean, and also this is not a line that I would take 100%. It's just very dependent on who I'm playing against. And in this case, I feel like this guy is capable of doing some really crazy shit at this point. So, yeah, we took a small sizing. And
by the way, I think there's something else that, again, people really need to pay attention to here. Because I see some people, again, one of our content creators, Nate, saying that sometimes you can just open rip here, but people probably don't defend enough. Here's the key, probably the most important part of this hand. When I look at this whole hand setup and what this is sort of amounted to, I think the most important part of this hand is his flop sizing. His flop sizing of 1/3 means that you will get to the river with more backdoorish types of hands that might need to turn them into bluffs. Now, people don't usually think that deeply at this level, but it is, right. If you want to be a real good poker player, that's the thing. Because if he bets pot and you call, if you guys are deeper, he goes 2/3 and you call, all those hands are out the window.
Right.
But when he bets really small on the flop, and again, for you guys out there that are in the villain's position, and they take a 1/3 sizing, you have to understand that you have to defend down lighter on the river when you check back the turn after taking 1/3 sizing on the flop, because more backdoor hands will be forced to bluff at the end. So the flop sizing here of your opponent, the flop c-bet sizing in the 3-bet pot, I think is the critical factor here. Now, in terms of your sizing of 75, maybe you could still get called going a little bit. Well, I don't know if I would ever 75, unless you were trying to induce. If you're just trying to make value here, I might 120 or something.
Yeah, I think it would. It's the villain's probably indifferent between 75 and 120 as far as getting called for value, but it's also slightly to potentially induce a bluff from this guy. Which actually does happen. I don't know, not that he's bluffed, but he raises to 500, so puts us in a little spot here. Yeah. So we go 75 and he goes 500, and he bets pretty quick too.
Well,
and threw out a purple chip.
I'll tell you.
So-
I mean, even walking through all this stuff, I can. I'll actually sum it up pretty quickly. It's not going to take me much thought here. If he's drunk and he checked back the turn, did he check back the turn pretty quickly too?
Yeah.
Yeah. If he's drunk and he checked back the turn, what he's really representing here is if he had like aces, or like eights full or sevens full or something like that. I don't buy it. I think you induced this play. But I would be way more concerned if you bet 200 and he jammed.
Right.
I just think that he might just think like this is a bullshit bet. So I would snap this off. I don't know if I would find the $75 bet here at the end, but the more I think about it and the way that this went down, you know, you might see a guy check back like aces or kings for a little deception on the turn, but a drunk, like, you know, they're not going to be thinking about
That's
at
what
that
I
many
thought.
levels. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, this guy wanted to push action. You know, he wanted to do the blind 12. If he had an overpair, he was betting every street without a doubt. So, like, had he bet the turn, I clearly just check back river, depending on his sizing. You know, if he goes big on the turn, I might fold.
Well, I mean, if he goes big on the turn, you might have a decision of just getting it in or folding, right?
Right. So the fact that I went check on the turn, in my mind, I'm like, this is never an overpair. And the sizing's so small that I gave him rope to, you know, blast off on me. So, and that didn't sound right, but to 3-bet pretty large, to raise
Just
large.
to bluff raise.
Right. So,
you
we
call,
make
right?
the call.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And he flips his hand over real quick. He turns over ace jack off with no hearts.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if your plan was to induce. It's not a bad induce bet. I mean, induce bets are hard to like actually pull off.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we can always say like, oh, we can make an induce bet. And I remember live legend Lyman Poker, who used to do a podcast for us way back in the day, like 10 years ago. He plays a lot of PLO. He would talk about how in PLO it's more extreme because in PLO you have situations where there isn't really as much river play in PLO because the game is all draw, you know, it's a drawy game, right? So you have a situation where you hold like top set in PLO and it remains the nuts on the river, right? You have got top set and you've been betting and someone's been calling you the whole way, right? Big bets. And then the river, everything just misses and it gets checked to you. Well, of course you're going to bet the nuts, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what's the best way to do it? And what he would say was he would sometimes try to put in some ridiculous reverse induce in position, like $20 into 1,000, and instead of the villain just snap folding, now the villain thinks, oh, I can take it away from him. You know what I mean? Something like that. But anyways, I appreciate the call. Thank you very much.
You got it, Bart.
All right.
Take care.
All right, let's move around here to the last caller. This is our fifth and last caller. Thank you, Alwyn, for being patient. Hello.
Of course. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I know that you've called in before, but this is a hand from Spain or something?
Yes, this is from Casino Barcelona in Barcelona, Spain. I was there for vacation and just decided to check it out.
Okay, so Barcelona. And of course, the scouting report on these public games in Europe are that they are very, very miserable and they are highly raked, which is why you see the Euros come over to the U.S.
Yeah, interestingly enough, there were a decent amount of people who were not speaking English, which makes sense, which made it a little difficult for me to kind of understand what was going on. Fortunately, the villain in this hand is actually somebody from England, so him and I were actually chatting quite a bit. So I guess still a Euro pro, but at least one that was speaking my language.
And what's the size of the game here?
So I converted it into US dollars. It's about a 5-10 game. So we'll stick with 5-10 for the purposes of this call.
You converted it from euros to dollars?
Yeah, the blinds.
I mean, it's not that hard of a conversion. What was it in euros?
I think it was about 5-10 as well. So actually,
5-10
you're
euros,
right? Sure.
You're not playing RMB, you know.
You caught me.
All right. So 5-10 euros. Okay, 5-10 euros. Yeah.
I will note though, I did not bring local cash, so I had to convert it there, and that did take quite a bit. So
how did you convert it? I'm just curious.
You can bring in your US dollars, and then at the counter they can exchange it for euros. But I forget the exact rate that they take, but it's quite high.
Yeah, they
I
take
wanna
a
say,
they take a vig. The
yeah.
reason why I ask about that is because I played in Cyprus one time, in Turkish Cyprus on the north side of the island at the Merit WPT Merit, and they did the same type of thing. But you never see that in the U.S. Like, there's no casinos that will change foreign currency. Like
Yeah,
you
yeah.
can't come and like play euros and they're going to give you dollars, but you do see it the other way around. I don't know how common it is, but everyone wants to, or they'll just playing in dollars too, right?
Right.
So how deep are you guys?
I will be the effective stack in this hand with about 2,500. So 2,520, I think, is what I have exactly.
Okay, 25-20. Okay,
So we start off. I'm in hijack with Ace of Clubs, King of Diamonds.
Ace of Clubs, King of Diamonds, and the hijack.
Correct.
Okay,
I opened to $30 or 30 euros. The cutoff was next to act. Immediately 3 bets to 100.
this is
Folds
the
back around to me.
this is the British
Oh
guy.
yeah. He's from Britain. He actually lives in Vegas and plays in Vegas most of the time, but just so happened to be also in Barcelona for who knows what.
So 30 to 100 folds back around to you. Okay,
I go ahead and 4-bet. Given how deep we are, I 4-bet to 370.
okay.
He thinks for a little bit and then calls.
Hero 4 bets to 370. So you're playing off of, I don't have a euros key, so I'm using dollars on the live stream, but you're playing off of 25-25, so it's straight 5-10. So you're 250 big blinds deep, right? Opening to 30, 3-bet to 100. Just out of curiosity thing to, are you, if he puts in a 5-bet, are you just going with it? Was that what the dynamic was here with Ace King offsuit?
So I'd been chatting with him a little bit before, and he usually plays pretty big games. I know he said when he was in Vegas, he usually plays 10-20 and 20-40. He was encouraging the entire table to straddle more. He voluntarily straddled on his own and a double straddled a few times and even triple straddled once or twice. I think he's just kind of, this felt like lower stakes for him. So I think I may have been forced to bring it to go all in, but depending on the sizing. Otherwise, I think I might fold. Depending, like if he prices me in too much, I think if there's playability post flop is basically what I'm saying.
So I have two thoughts on this. One that go in either direction. The first thought that I have is if I'm playing against a guy like that your sort of description that might say like play larger, blah, 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 I might do just a lot of just calling here to almost like disguise the strength of my hand and call down, on a lot of runouts, even sometimes all the way down with like, non-pairs. Obviously it depends on the runout. You're sort of disguising your hand, shaping the hand where you're going to have a strong hand, especially if you hit top pair to call all the way down. He probably will barrel off, put a ton of pressure on you, and should effectively try to value bet something that's worse because your hand is slightly under rep. That's number one for the case for calling. The case for 4-betting, though, is that a lot of times you'll see these guys call way too wide. Like if you take the sizing that you have done here, then your 4-bet is just pure value, right? Like, I mean, he's obviously should be structuring correctly to the 3-bet, but sometimes even, some of these guys have egos and stuff, and, are they really folding off what they're supposed to fold off versus calling what they're supposed to call? And it could just be, I'm losing too much value here. He's going to 3-bet call with like 100% of hands. If he's going to 3-bet call with 100% of his hands that he's 3-betting with, then sure, it should be a 4-bet with Ace King. But I do sometimes take that somewhat passive line because, there's nobody in between, right? I mean, it's not an automatic 4-bet anyways, hijack versus cutoff, but, there's no overlay per se. It's mid-ish to late, I would say. It's not like button versus small blind, and it's not under the gun versus like under the gun +1, which are the two extremes. So
Right.
I assume he calls.
He does.
Yeah.
He thinks for maybe like a couple seconds and then goes ahead and calls.
Okay.
So the pot is about 740.
Okay. Okay. On to the flop here.
The flop comes Ace of Spades, Jack of Diamonds, 5 of Diamonds.
Ace of Spades, Jack of Diamonds, 5 of diamonds. So you flop. This is exactly what I'm talking about, right? You know, he
Yes.
might think that you just never have ace king here, and you know he might barrel you off, but you're gonna obviously hold on here quite a bit.
Yeah. So with pretty much all of my 4-bet range, I decide to bet small, and I bet about a third pot, so 250.
So hero bet. Sorry, somebody in the live chat was saying that shift. I can't get the euro. Oh, there we go. I got the euro sign up. All right, so hero bet's 250 here. 250, okay. Yeah, obviously into 750. Yep.
And he goes ahead and calls. So I guess that's actually my first question is in terms of flop sizing. I'm thinking with this flop, I'm either way ahead or way behind.
I mean,
Maybe he's trapping with aces, but otherwise it's I'm either way ahead or way behind, and I think that's kind of where.
yeah, I mean, it's a 4-bet. It's a
Yeah.
4-bet pot, right? So it seems pretty, you know, there's a lot of automatic stuff in 4-bet pots on the flop a lot too, you know, where you're supposed to be almost always c-betting, and you can pretty much always c-bet for this type of sizing, like almost your entire range. And
Right.
to start to split that off in 4-bet pots starts to get a little bit complex. I mean, could you have hands that went 250 versus hands that went like 500? I mean, when he calls here, the pot's going to be 1250, right? 1250. You guys are going to have about what 19-ish left. It's you can still get the money in. I guess my question to you is that when you start with this small bet, are you ever considering checking a blank, almost like a trap, like an offsuit 7 or something like that, to try to let him? Here's my thought. Like if you take this small sizing, I don't know if he, you know, again, I don't necessarily know what he thinks of you, but it's like, yeah, like if you're capable, you know, maybe he hero calls you down with an ace, you could maybe get 4-bet pot and get 3 streets and get called by like ace queen or ace 10. But once you, going back to sort of the last call too, when you start with a small sizing here, which is kind of a routine, if you get a blank on the turn, you could check, and he probably needs to start bluffing his any of those sort of gut shot types of holdings. Now the thing is that if he just checks it back, you have to make up for it on the river by like blasting away. I'm just kind of thinking out loud. I don't know what if your plan was just to go bet or what.
Depending on the turn, I think more than likely
On
I'd
a
be
blank.
checking the turn. Yeah.
On a blank, you're going to check the turn, like say like the 7 of clubs.
Yeah, I think depending on that turn, since especially because I'm out of position, I think, like I said, I'm either way ahead or way behind, and I don't want to fold out too many hands that it beat. For example, if he has kings or queens or even pocket tens that decide to float, I don't want to fold too many of those out.
I don't know if I agree with you that you're way ahead, way behind. All you've done is 4-bet, and then you've taken a 1/3 sizing on the flop. That doesn't put you in a way ahead, way behind spot. If you were way ahead, if you were said, oh, I bet the flop and he called, now I'm way ahead, way behind, then you've done something wrong. But that's not the case here. You just went 1/3 on the flop. You 4-bet ace king, you went 1/3 on the flop. He called. You're not way ahead, way behind on a block 7. You know what I'm saying? Like, so
Sure.
I think you're under-repping yourself a little bit here. So,
True.
anyways,
I guess. Yeah.
12. So it's 1250 here. 1250 euros here to the turn. Okay.
Yep. The turn does not come a blank. It comes a queen of clubs.
Okay. Well, that's not a blank.
So my thinking on this is a lot of his 4-bet calling range this is pretty much represented here, whether it's queens, jacks, and so on and so forth. And felt like I was in a spot where I was probably again like in this middle area. So I decided to check here.
Okay. I just wonder, what are you betting here on the turn, if anything, in a 4-bet?
If I were to bet,
Yeah.
you mean like what cards would I bet, or how much?
What on this card? What are you betting? So if you can, so same thing, 4-bet pot, right? You bet 1/3, he calls, turns a queen. Instead of checking, you bet. I'm saying, what are you betting here? What hands are you betting here?
What hands would I bet here?
Yeah.
I'd probably bet sets, aces, queens, jacks. I may bet ace queen sometimes.
And then check everything else and bet king 10, I assume.
Yeah, and king 10, right.
Yeah. I mean, and the other thing too is that this card gives the guy a lot of showdown value where, like, if you ever wanted to try to get I wouldn't want to get tricky if I had super thick value, especially even unblocking like everything, like with king 10. I don't know if I would get tricky with it and try to go for a check raise, because this might get checked through quite a bit. I don't know if he bets off queen jack here on the turn. Yeah, maybe. I'm just kind of, like I said, I'm kind of thinking out loud here. I don't think I don't think anyone's gonna get on you for checking ace king here. So you check, okay.
Yeah, I think at this point, pretty much most aces that call for bet are beating me. Sure, there might be a few like random ace 4, ace 3, ace deuce, random ones, but like the main ones, ace queen, ace jack, are now beating me. So I check. He goes ahead and checks back after thinking for maybe a few seconds.
Checks behind. Okay. By the way, you probably wouldn't have king 10 because it's a 4-bet pot, but who knows, like once in a while. I mean, I guess you might have some ace X, but I mean, again, that's kind of weird too. Like even if you had ace X of diamonds, or you really continue. I mean, that's why it's kind of a weird thing to be here on the turn. And then, I mean, you could have jack, jack, but are you 4-betting jack, jack? Are you 4-betting queen, queen? You might be 4-betting ace, ace, sure. But you check and hero checks behind, and it remains 1,250 euros.
Yep.
Okay.
The river comes yet another non-blank. It comes the king of spades.
Oh. So you make top two. Ace of spades, jack of diamonds, 5 of diamonds. Turn is the queen of clubs. Check, check. River is the king of spades. And it puts a one-liner out there to a 10.
Correct.
Okay.
So I think for a little bit, and I consider two options. One is to do a block bet and do a bet fold strategy, and the other is just to do a check call strategy.
The only thing about blocking here against a guy that you think is capable, and then you say, oh, I'm going to bet fold, block fold. If he's any type of player, if he's a high stakes player, how much 10x do you have in a 4-bet pot?
Myself or him?
You. Like if you're saying like you're going to block fold and the guy can hand read and he's going to and he's going to jam all in, like how much 10x, you see what I'm saying? Like how much 10x do you have here at a 4-bet pot? Not much, right? So
yeah, I think he is more likely to have 10s than I am.
Yeah, I mean, you'd also get bluffed off the hand a lot too if you're going to bet full. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know if I like that. Maybe if you were playing smaller stakes, more straightforward opponents, somebody that wasn't that good, sure, you can bet fold here all day. You get called by 2 pair, right? I mean, that's the whole thing. You get called by 2 pair, and then you only get raised by a 10x. But here, I don't know if I'd want to open myself up.
Yeah. I consider it and then decide not to block bet, and I decide to check. He thinks for a few seconds, and then he jams, covering me. So for 1,900.
So the opponent here, so cutoff jams, 1,900?
Yes, that's how much I had left.
So it's about pot and a half, right?
Yep.
It's about pot and a half. So again, you're going to be getting less than 2-1. You can go down the MDF streets too, where we can say, well, he's betting pot and a half, which, if he was betting 2 times the pot, he needs to win 66% of the time. Pot and a half is 60% of the time. You need to defend with 40% of hands if you went from MDF spot. Here's the thing, like, because you don't have 10x here, and I think the river probably is reflected almost always with a check given normal ranges at the end, then his bet sizing probably should be polar with a 10x and with a bluff, right? Giving you a worse price. And again, I'll go back to what I said too before here. Your flop sizing is pretty small. But one of the things, though, that I would say that, again, people don't necessarily harness the concept is that the queen is not a blank. It's different from another caller that we had earlier on today, where the 3 was a blank and it went check, check. The queen's not a blank. And you can definitely have like some ace king. You might even have ace jack here. You could even check ace queen here some of the time too. So the fact that you check from up front on the turn does not mean that you have nothing. The reason why I say that is because that would be indicative to me where hands that had a little bit of like a draw wouldn't just like blindly bet all the time. It's not like ace jack 5, you bet 1/3, the guy calls with king 10 suited or queen 10 suited or whatever on the flop, and now the turn is like a brick 7 and you check, and now he should be betting king 10 and queen 10 on a brick 7 when you check a lot. But here, because you're going to be checking so much, it means he doesn't bet that much on the turn. Nowhere near as much as if it was a brick, if you follow what I'm saying. So he can have some of those pair plus 10x types of holdings or a 10x type of diamond type of holding, something like that. Now, is 10-10 called on the flop to 1/3? 10-10 with a diamond on ace jack 5 in a 4-bet pot? Pretty close, but I don't know, man. I mean, you'd have... What if he had like just absolutely naked, like a naked suited connector, like 7-8 of diamonds? Does that hand... the point that I'm trying to make here is that it's pretty obvious that if he had a hand like 7-8 of diamonds on ace jack 5, and then the turn was like, you know, an offsuit 9, an offsuit 6, some real brick, an offsuit 4, and you check, he's supposed to bet.
Right.
Now, when the turn is a queen, maybe he is supposed to bet a lot, but the point that I'm trying to make here, though, is that you're not always like check folding on the turn. You might have a lot of check calls on the turn because of the texture. So it makes him bet those hands less often, I would say. So, I mean, there's that. So maybe, because you would think, maybe, 7-8 of diamonds might. I mean, I would still probably lean towards a fold here, I would say. But yeah, if you think he's capable, it's pretty dicey. I haven't even looked at the comments. People saying, I mean, he's a Euro. What 10s does he have? 10-9 of diamonds. Well, what about Jack 10? What about Queen? The point that I'm trying to make is like Jack 10 suited, Queen 10 suited, things like that. You got top.
Yeah.
Never doing anything
I think
worse for value, but yeah, it's probably closer than we think.
The way I was thinking is like it's relatively hard for him to have a 10, but I think it's even hard. This is my thought process afterwards, so with some like thinking, but I think it's relatively hard for him to have a 10, but it's also hard for him to have a bluff, or at least him betting for value that's worse. Because I think a lot of 2 pairs, whether it's ace jack or whether it's queen jack, king jack, any of these 2 pairs, I'm not entirely sure they would go this polar. And I almost want to say the only hands that would go this polar that are for value are sets, and maybe not even sets, and 10s. Not necessarily 10x, 10-10, but like 10x. So I think the way I think should have thought about this in the moment is that that the value range, I'm not necessarily beating much of the value range. So I think that, and then
well, how does what else is it? What value range is here besides 10x?
That's kind of what I'm thinking is like most of the value range,
king,
whether it's like queens, jacks, might not even bet here, or at least they wouldn't bet this big.
Queens or jacks are going to bet the turn, though, right? Queens and jacks are going to bet the turn. And they're not going to. Queens and jacks aren't going to check back the turn and then jam on this river. I mean, maybe kings. But you lose to kings, and you block it, and you block kings, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's probably a 10 or nothing here. It's probably a 10 or nothing.
Yeah.
Yanni Kareem says, "How is this not a snap call? How is this?" I still think he has queens. How can he have queens the way that he played this hand? Ace queen, ace jack. Come on, why ace queen, ace jack? What, to get the guy off of ace king? Come on, guys. I mean, I think you just kind of boiled this down and try to figure out like how many tens does he possibly have here. You bet 1/3, so
Yeah.
all of the Broadway hands are in there. And
Like gutters, like king
yeah,
10.
I mean, all of the
queen
Broadway
10.
hands are in there. You did size 4-bet pretty large, so I mean, what bluffs here? So I guess he's probably supposed to turn some of the worst 2 pairs into bluffs, like queen jack, something like that.
Yeah, I think some other bluffs are potential miss
Queen
flush
jack,
draws.
queen jack, and king queen maybe get turned into bluffs here. I think would make sense here. And then again, like I said, the question is that how often does he just have a low suited connector, and is that bet on the turn with just approaching absolutely no showdown value? If the low suited connector is bet a lot on the turn, approaching no showdown value, and then he checks behind and he jams here, then he doesn't have that much of that. Although I went back to what I said before, though, it's not, the queen isn't just like an automatic give up for you. You're check calling a lot. What did you end up doing?
I ended up tanking for a little bit, and then someone at the table called clock within like a minute, which did not give me much time. And then I side called.
And the
Do you want the reveal?
Please.
He had Jack 10 of hearts.
Jack 10. I mean, that's one of the hands, right? That makes sense.
Yeah. I think one thing that I was. Oh, yeah.
No,
Sorry,
that's what I was just saying. Like on the turn. Well, I mean, he had a pair anyways, but like, well, any turn is going to be any card on the turn. He's still going to have a pair. I was just saying, like, if he had like queen 10 and the turn was like a 7, is he starting to bet off that? What were you going to say? Sorry.
I was going to say, like, it made it tough because I was looking at the suits in my hand, and I don't have the ace of diamonds. So theoretically, he could have missed diamond draws with the ace of diamonds. The only problem is I hold the king of diamonds, so I block potential bluffs there, like king 10 of diamonds, that could have been floating on a flop. So that was, I'm not sure if that makes a huge difference, but that was something that I thought about.
Yeah, I mean, I get so it's just interesting of what is supposed to turn into a bluff here at the end for him. Because if I'm saying king queen and queen jack, maybe ace, whatever ace X little that he defends to as a 4-bet, maybe sometimes gets turned into a bluff. And we could be at this all day long. This is where sometimes it's fun to go to the computer and take a look. It's just it's not a common spot to be in, you know?
Yeah, I ended up chatting with him afterwards as I was racking up, and I said, I mean, it was a good bet. You got me to call, but I asked him, like, what hands would you have taken a similar sizing with? And he said, I'm not betting anything other than a 10 or pocket aces. And he said, very occasionally I may bet some bluffs like 8-7 of diamonds.
The question is how often are those middish, I keep going back to how often are those middish suited connectors checked back on the turn or bet? That's an interesting exercise. Again, you know, usually you start a bluff, right, with 7-8 of diamonds that has no showdown value, but when a card comes in on the turn that's reflected a lot from you as the hero checking the turn, it means that you're probably supposed to bluff less often, as opposed to if the turn was like an offsuit 4 and you checked, then it's obviously starts to bluff. But Alwyn, thank you very much for the call. I appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Well, it seems like we're going longer and longer. Ryan Nash, are you still in the live chat, buddy? Are you still with us in the live chat? I was going to ask you this on the side, but I might as well ask you with all these people here too. I don't know if he left or what, but part of the reason why we're going extra long, oh God, really? This is not going to be good for the editing. Now that I see myself and the little bit of liquid that's coming out of my nostrils, we might have to do some editing job. I know you can't see it, but I was going to say part of the reason why we're going. Jesus Christ. Part of the reason why we're doing extra hands is because of the fact that, you know, we'll be skipping some weeks during the WSOP. So we're trying to bank some calls. But again, if you want to get in on the show, We're always looking for new callers. Click on the link in the description. We always, give you priority if you're a CLP sub. We read all the submissions. Michael G will pass along the best non-sub submissions to me. Thank you guys for keeping it real again, and we'll see you all next